All right, I'm calling this thing Thinking Critically and Open-Mindedly About the Nazca Mummies. I like this pair of concepts, thinking critically and open-mindedly. There's a tendency among people who encourage critical thinking to think that that means you don't get to believe anything cool. And I'm not like that. I think that critical thinking is compatible with believing in cool things. You have to be open-minded as well as critical, and those are compatible with each other. In many ways, what we're going to do tonight is a tale of two hearings, one in the United States and one in Mexico. This past July 26th, the U.S. House Oversight Committee hosted its first official UAP hearing. UAP, I'll explain in a bit, stands for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. It's the new term that's replaced, although badly replaced, the term UFO. At this hearing, there were three witnesses, Mr. Graves, Mr. Grush, and Commander Fravor. The two people on the end, Graves and Fravor, are former Navy aviators who have already been public talking about their encounters with these unusual objects over the ocean. David Grush was kind of a new character who showed up this summer. Grush is actually the reason why I started paying attention to any of this at all. If you haven't been following the news here, I'm not going to talk much about this, but unlike the two on the end who are saying there's weird things in our sky, Mr. Grush is a former intelligence official who said that he has talked to people internal to government and government contracting programs that claim that the United States has been running a secret and potentially illegal UFO recovery program since the 1930s, that we are in possession of multiple non-human origin craft and the bodies of non-human organisms. One of the things that was frustrating about this trial, those of you who watched it, is that although there was a lot of fascinating bipartisan support, so good job Congress, we get a rare good job Congress for this one, they would ask a lot of very interesting questions, and Mr. Grush just kept having to say, I could tell you the answer to that question if we were in a secure facility, but we don't have permission from the Department of Defense to be in a secure facility, so I can't answer that question because it's classified. So allegedly, Mr. Grush has compelling evidence that we have alien bodies in the possession of the U.S. government as well as alien ships, but he can't show anybody. On the other hand, in Mexico, on September the 12th, they had their own hearing in front of the Chamber of Deputies, which is essentially their counterpart of our House of Representatives. And they did similar things, showing videos of strange light objects in the sky. But then they just rolled out these two boxes, and they're like, here's some aliens. And then they got up and explained why they believed these to be aliens. They look surprisingly like E.T. Of course, some of you have seen some of the memes going around about a cake that looks like this. And, a news coverage immediately shifted towards something like this, right? News coverage has been almost universally dismissive. No, this is not an alien, and here's why. Two non-human beings were shown off during a bizarre hearing of Mexico's Congress. The bodies are believed to be a muddle of human and animal bones held together with glue and fake skin. There's been a claim made that these mummies have been around for several years now, 5 or 6 years, and that they were debunked when they first came out. And honestly, the news coverage about this event has been just horrible. Like, there has been absolutely no attempt to take seriously the evidence that's been presented, or to actually listen to the arguments that people are trying to put forward. There's just been this widespread dismissiveness. So my subtitle for this talk is, actually, yes, it is an alien, and here's why. Those of you who are in this room probably have some idea of who I am, but if this gets up on YouTube, which is the plan, then people won't necessarily know who I am. So I'm a philosophy professor here at the Ohio State University. I am not a scientist. I don't claim to be a scientist. I have no special scientific expertise. I am an educated amateur. I've always liked science, but I don't claim to have any research experience or anything like that. I do teach logic and critical thinking, and if I bring anything to the table here, it's that. I'm trying to show what the arguments are and how the evidence fits into those arguments and how we should think about it. That's what I have to offer. And this is my claim. Anytime I make a hot take, it'll be yellow. That means I mean it, but I know that what I'm saying is controversial, right? So here's what I mean. Anyone who carefully considers the publicly available evidence and thinks clearly about it may rationally conclude that the mummies are aliens. No special expertise is required at this point. One of the things that people keep saying is we just need to keep waiting for more evidence, wait for the scientists to take a look. And I want to say, no, we don't. The scientists have already taken a look. They've already given us sufficient information. You are now allowed to believe in aliens rationally. This is what I want to say. If I were in a cockier mood, the original version of this slide is, you should believe in aliens, but I'll just make it permission rather than obligation, just to be kinder to the skeptics in the room. One thing we need to clarify right off the bat is what I mean by the word alien. We need a good bucket term for, like, I don't know, something weird, something other. That's all I mean by alien. It's a group of intelligent beings other than what I'm calling mainline humans. We are presumably mainline humans. If there's any aliens in the room, please stick around, chat with me afterwards. I have a lot of questions. Normally, when people think of the word alien, they might think of extraterrestrial, so organisms like you and me, but from some other planet. Aliens might be extraterrestrials, but they might be something else. They could be from another dimension. They could be what I call shadow terrestrials. So like, I don't know, beings from before the comet came and they've been living underground with Godzilla for a long time, or Atlanteans or whatever. Those all count as aliens for my purpose. Angels and demons, I don't even know what those are. But a lot of people, when they think about UFOs, they insist that it must be something to do with this. I'm not ruling that out. Time travelers, I'm going to put it up here. It's not time travelers, because time travel doesn't make any sense. We could talk about that some other time. And not just out there somewhere here. So a lot of people say, I believe in aliens, just that they haven't been here. No. So when I say aliens, I mean here, on this planet, hanging out, doing... I'm not sure. All right. Now, if I start saying I believe in aliens, someone's going to quote Carl Sagan at me, so I'm just going to get it out of the way. What counts is not what sounds plausible, not what we would like to believe, not what one or two witnesses claim, but only what is supported by hard evidence, rigorously and skeptically examined. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I agree with Carl Sagan. Extraordinary claims do require extraordinary evidence. This is a general principle that we have in philosophy and epistemology, which is the study of knowledge, which is that the amount of evidence that you need for something depends on what your background evidence, or what we call your priors, are, right? So you kind of have to say, right, like, if I said, what am I drinking, you're all going to think, why? Because this looks like a water bottle, and everything you've seen that looks like this has contained water, and you just assumed when I started drinking out of this that I was drinking water. It is water. I need it for my mouth to function properly. If it were alcohol, I would fall asleep. So that wouldn't be a very good idea. Yeah? You needed essentially no evidence at all to come to the correct belief that this was water, because you know what this kind of thing is. It's not at all surprising. Yeah? Whereas if I said I was drinking plutonium or something, then you would want a lot of evidence for that, right? Okay. So one thing we need to figure out is, where are we starting? Like, what's the starting point for thinking about how likely it is that something is an alien? And some of you are very familiar with this idea of Fermi's paradox. Fermi, of course, one of the most famous and important and influential physicists of the 20th century, Enrico Fermi, made an argument basically like this. There are billions of sun-like stars in the Milky Way. Many of these have Earth-like planets in the habitable zone. These days, with the James Webb Space Telescope, we're finding a lot of them. So this has been confirmed. There's actually quite a few of these things. Many of these stars are much older than our sun. Some Earth-like planets could have developed intelligent life long ago, right? So you get the idea. If we developed intelligent life and other planets have had a million years or so more than we have, then they could have gotten where we are 1,000,000 years ago, which means they could be really far ahead of us, technologically speaking. Some of these civilizations may have developed interstellar travel, and the Milky Way galaxy could be completely traversed in a few million years, even without any kind of faster-than-light travel. Just boring old, slower-than-light travel. You can get across the whole Milky Way in less than 1 million years or so. So the Earth should have already been visited by extraterrestrial civilizations, or at least their probes. Paradoxically, though, there is no convincing evidence that this has happened. The reason this is called a paradox, what a paradox is two things that seem incompatible that are nonetheless true. That's what a paradox is, right? So we're going to break up the two things. These things, the yellow things, these are Fermi's priors, right? Based on my understanding of the nature of the Milky Way galaxy, etc., I would expect there to have been alien contact. But when I look, there hasn't been. This is surprising. That's why it's a paradox. Got it? So I agree with Fermi about his priors, but not his observations. His priors are correct. If we're just thinking from the armchair, how likely is it that there are aliens in contact with us? The probability should be high. Our expectation should be, yeah, of course there are. I disagree with him about his observations because I think we do have solid evidence of alien contact. In fact, I think we have two separate and converging arguments, what I'll call the 50C argument and what I'll call the mummy argument. I'm mostly going to talk about the mummy argument, but I do want to quickly blast through the 50C argument because I think it helps serve as backdrop for where we should be in thinking about these mummies. So we shouldn't be too surprised that aliens exist, given that we have good background beliefs about that, and we have two converging lines of evidence. I'm not the weird one. You are. Hot take, independent of the aliens. Sorry, not the aliens. That would be silly. It would be silly to believe in aliens independent of the aliens. Independent of the mummies, you should already believe in aliens. So I need to give you some terminology. You all know what a UFO is, right? The flying saucery things. Nowadays, the government likes to use this term, unidentified aerial or anomalous phenomena, UFO, unidentified flying objects. And this is my term, 5 observable craft. So these are actually nested concepts, right? Each is a proper subset of the one above it. So there are UFOs are UAPs and 50Cs are UFOs and UAPs. What's a 50C? I understand I haven't told you this is my term. I mean, it's sort of my term. It's actually based on some terminology from this guy named Luis Elizondo, who was the director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, which was the top secret government program that's been keeping track of aliens when nobody knew they were doing it until the New York Times report came out in 2017 saying, wait, there's actually a secret project that's being funded by the government to keep track of UFOs. Anyways, the guy who ran that program noted that these things actually aren't unidentified. We can identify them by certain features that they have, these ones. Anti-gravity. So they hover and they move without wings and without thrusters. How do they do this? I don't know. Anti-gravity. They have instantaneous acceleration. So you guys are used to, when you turn too fast in your car and you feel your body push against the side of it. If you turn really fast, like in a jet, then you can experience huge amounts of G-forces. Generally speaking, even a fighter pilot's going to start blacking out at about 10 Gs. That's a lot. The turns we're seeing these things make are in the 100 G category. So that should liquefy any pilots and just bend the fuselage of whatever it's made of. So this is very surprising. Hypervelocity, the fastest we've been able to go, you all saw Top Gun Maverick. We're, eking closer to Mach 10, right? Tom Cruise just got slightly over it. These things are going like Mach 20, which is fast. Transmedium means we see them passing from space through the atmosphere, in the atmosphere, and also in the ocean. This is actually why we stopped calling them aerial phenomena and started calling them anomalous, because we're seeing them not only in the sky, but also in the ocean. And stealth. Sometimes they show up on radar or infrared, sometimes they don't. Yeah? Okay, so just to give you some examples, this is an unidentified aerial phenomena. There's a weird thing glowing in the sky. We have no idea what it is. It's a phenomena. It's something I'm experiencing. It might not be anything out there. It could be lens flare. It could be a seizure. Who knows what it is? It appears to be some light in the sky. I'm not even committed when I say there's a UAP to there being an object. Yeah? But UFOs are objects, something out there that is a physical thing, and we just don't know what it is. Maybe it's a weather balloon. Maybe it's a distant plane. Maybe it's a duck. Who knows? All of those things are UFOs if you don't know what they are, right? But again, the reason I like to use the term 50C, or 5 observable craft, is because they're not unidentified. We can identify them by their features. So it would be a little bit like if a pilot said, I saw a hot pink hypervelocity jet. You'd say, well, whose is it? Oh, I don't know. What's it doing here? No idea. How does it work? Not a clue. But I can tell you what it looks like, and I can tell you what it did, and I got pretty close to it, and I can show you a video, and I have some radar data. I've identified it in some sense, but not in others. This is what a 50C is like. So here's the 50C argument. The 50C argument is just this. Now, just to be clear, I'm just going to tell you the argument, and then I have to justify all the things I'm saying. Make sense? I don't assume that these things are transparent to you when I introduce them to you. So there are 50Cs now. Here in 2023, 50Cs exist in our airspace, around our country, all over the world, etc. If there are 50Cs now, there were also in 1947. If there were 50Cs in 1947, aliens exist, therefore aliens exist. This is what we call in philosophy a valid argument. That just means the structure of the argument is such that if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. So if I can convince you of each of the 3 premises, then you should be convinced that aliens exist. Make sense? So I just need to walk through and quickly prove to you that aliens exist. Here we go. Why should we think there are 50Cs now? Here's Elizondo again. The government has already stated for the record that they're real. I'm not telling you that. The United States government is telling you that. This little guy, Barack Obama. There is footage and records of objects in the sky. We don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory. They do not have an easily explainable pattern. Here's perhaps the most famous incident of a 50C that has ever been. In November 2004, the aircraft carrier, the USS Nimitz, was carrying, planes like it does, largely these F-18s. Another ship, the Princeton, the USS Princeton, had some really sexy new upgraded radar. And when they turned on the radar and started paying attention to things, they started to see groups of objects doing really weird stuff, including coming from space and dropping down like 20, 50,000 feet in a few seconds, and then moving in ways that are these 50C kind of ways that don't seem to be consistent with our current understanding of the laws of physics. So they said, hey, Commander Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Dietrich, get in your F-18s with your backseaters, your weapons officers, and go see if you can find one. And they fly out there, 4 trained military aviators, see an object described as a white tic-tac-shaped object, metallic, and approximately 40 feet in length, moving strangely above the surface of the ocean. Fravor turned to engage, and this thing turned at him and flew up. They kind of circled each other a little bit, and then it took off. That hypervelocity thing just disappeared faster than anything we can do by far. Now, I know a lot of people make noise about this. This is the video that these 2 planes did not get. Those 2 planes went back to the carrier and said, oh my gosh, in Navy speak, we saw something crazy. Can you send up the new plane with the fancy front-looking infrared sensor and see if you can find it and get some video? This is the video they got. The pilot of that plane didn't see it with his eyes. They only saw it with the sensors, and they didn't get, this is what you got. Is this the evidence? No. This is the evidence, the whole picture, right? The radar signature from the Princeton, the eyewitness of 4 trained military aviators, and the video, right? If it were just the video, it wouldn't be very interesting. But the idea that Commander Fravor would accidentally engage a weather balloon and then not know that's what happened when it turned at him and flew and engaged him and then took off is ludicrous. This is their job. It is literally life and death to engage things in their airspace and decide whether or not they are threats, right? This is very strong evidence that they did in fact see what they claimed to see. Now, so that's the idea. There are 5OCs now. Now, why would I think that if there are 5OCs now, there were in 1947? Because there's been a steady stream of what I call multiple witness, multiple sensor observations, where you have more than one simultaneous eyewitness, along with radar data and perhaps infrared data and things like that. Maybe we have pictures, maybe we have video. Those kinds of things have been happening frequently ever since the 1940s. The first major incident is this one, Kenneth Arnold's flying saucers. Kenneth Arnold was a private pilot. He was flying around Mount Rainier, and he saw 9 shiny UFOs doing these weird 5OC kinds of maneuvers. He tilted his plane to make sure it wasn't just a thing in his window. He pulled the window up to look and see if they were still there, and they were. He used his fancy math, and presumably some kind of chronograph, and measured how fast it moved, and it was moving real fast. I'm not trying to prove to you that these things are here. Go spend some time on ufos.wiki. This is actually a very lovely website that has really nice presentation of the data that there is that these UFOs, 5OCs, exist. If there were 5OCs in 1947, we didn't make them. A lot of people these days are saying, yeah, there's weird stuff in the sky. I don't know, it must be Lockheed or something. Not in 1947. In 1947, no mainline humans had anti-gravity, right? The best things we had were like barely put together rockets and mostly like big propellers on front of metal boxes, right? Like those things were hot in 1947, and the people who flew them were great. Well, I don't know, some of them were probably dicks, but you know, they were good pilots. But none of us had anti-gravity. Go watch Oppenheimer, right? We're just starting to figure out physics. We're like, I don't know, if we throw a bunch of stuff, will it go boom? And then it goes boom. Like that's where we are in 1947, right? We're not building anti-grav. So, and some more evidence that we didn't have it then is if we did have anti-gravity craft in 1947, whoever we is would have used it in one of the armed conflicts that we have lost since that time, right? So like if the US had them, we would have used them in Vietnam, right? If Russia had them today, they'd be using them in Ukraine. Make sense? All right. So before we come anywhere near the mummies, this is where I am. 5OCs have been here since 1947. They were made by aliens. Aliens look something like this. And the US government is hiding these things from us. Before the mummies happened, this is where I was. Ask me more questions than that, and I'm going to, at that point, be a responsible philosopher and say, I don't know. Like, we don't have evidence for what exactly is going on and how many groups there are and all that kind of stuff. We don't have good evidence for reasons we could talk about. This is where I was prior to the mummies. And then the mummies showed up. As in, the mummies came to my awareness. They've been around for 1,000 years or so? I don't know. Here's my hot take. The Nazca mummies provide an independent confirmation of the 5OC argument. The burden of proof for public acceptance of their authenticity was met about 5 years ago, and nobody listened. This is my doubling down on the claim I made earlier. No special expertise required at this point. The proof given for all of us to have enough reason to believe was presented 5 years ago, and nobody listened to the people who said it. One of the reasons why I decided that it was worth being crazy enough to, as an OSU professor, give a talk and record it and all that kind of stuff about alien mummies is I think the people who've done this work deserve that it be paid attention to. They've done some interesting work. I think they've already demonstrated what needs to be demonstrated. Let me give you some preliminary facts. These are technically not mummies. Mummies have their internal organs removed. That's not true of these things. These are merely desiccated corpses. So it's sort of like if you take a dead body and put it in a food dehydrator, right? And it would turn into essentially beef jerky with bones in it, yeah? How do you do that? What's the food dehydrator look like? Oh, it's a bunch of diatomaceous earth, which is this substance that's made of old microorganisms that sucks up huge amounts of liquid. So they were covered in this. So as they decomposed, all the liquid was absorbed into the diatomaceous earth. They are almost completely rigid, as you would imagine, right? If you have a bunch of beef jerky with bones in it, it's not going to be flexible. It's going to be quite stiff. They were found by Hoqueros. I will attempt to say things in Spanish-ish. I took Spanish in high school. I'm a typical American. I only speak English. Apologies to everybody who speaks this beautiful language for what I'm about to do to it. A Hoquero is essentially a grave robber. They're kind of like Indiana Jones with fewer principles about what they find ending up in a museum. They might be perfectly comfortable to sell them to the random rich person who would want to have it in their living room. They claim that there are 50 plus bodies. We have, as in we have, in this room, available to us on the internet mostly, good data on at least 10 of them. 8 of them have been labeled humanoid reptiles. That's mostly what I will be talking about. And there are 2 other ones that are different that we'll talk about later. All of them have been given names. This is the 2 mummies that were presented in Mexico. They are called Mauricio and Clara. We also have in Peru these ones, Alberto and Josefina. The family is just a group of 3 that was found apparently in the same place. And one called Victoria. Victoria, unfortunately, has lost their head. In this case, literally. There's a bunch of humans involved, living humans. They fall into several categories. We've got some journalists, we've got some archaeologists, and we have what I will call exobiologists, because I believe these are aliens. So these are people who have been studying the biology of aliens for the past many years, past several years, 5, 6, 7 years. We'll divide them into 2 categories, people who are focused on genetics and people who are focused on anatomy. All right, let me introduce you to some of the key members of the team. This is the guy who I'm kind of banking it all on. I trust this guy. I'll hope you'll see why. This is Dr. Jose de Jesus Zalce Benitez from Mexico. He is the guy on stage during the Mexico hearing that convinced me, oh shit, I need to pay attention to these mummies. This guy's got a really interesting argument. I need to see what's up with this. He is the director of the Scientific Institute for Health of the Mexican Navy. He used to be head of the Department of Legal and Forensic Medicine within the Mexican Navy. He has a master's in forensic medicine from the University of the Army and Air Force in Mexico. So this is a pretty serious guy, not a kind of guy who would put his reputation on the line for some cheap scam. This is Jose de la Cruz Rios Lopez. He was the Secretary of Health for the state of Campeche, a relatively prestigious position. He's really fascinating because he's been presenting a lot of his data, even quite recently. I follow him on Facebook, and he's been presenting some interesting data that he has not yet presented, but which he probably will at this November 7th hearing, when everybody else gets to figure out what you will now know, that these things are real. There's a handful of other people. This guy, Raimundo Salas Alfaro, he's a radiologist. This guy, Edson Salazar Vivanco, he's a surgeon. This guy, Thierry Hameen, is the archaeologist who got the mummies from the Hoqueros in the first place. He then called the Ministry of Culture, and they said, we don't want to talk to you because you think you have aliens. And he's been trying ever since to get serious scientists to pay attention. One thing that I want you to pay attention to is that these people are not acting like hoaxers. Hoaxers don't say things like, hey, please come look at my hoax. Please run it through high-quality medical scanners to confirm that it's not a hoax. This is a weird thing to do if you're holding on to a hoax. And that's the way they've been behaving pretty consistently for several years now. If you'd like evidence for this, I will point you at the Peruvian hearing that happened in November of 2018. This is the one that I think met the burden of proof. I think all of us should have been convinced by the evidence presented at this. I will give you a link to a video of this. You can look at it at your leisure. There's a website called the Alien Project. You can see a lot of CT scans and X-rays and various analysis, skin analysis, some DNA analysis of what they're discovering about these things. It's very interesting. You should go look at it. There is a documentary called Unearthing Nazca, The Complete Story. It's in English. It's well produced. It basically tells the story of where these things came from and what we've learned about them up to the point where it was produced. Let me give you the mummy argument. Remember I said there's aliens. We have two separate, distinct, and converging arguments, the 50C argument and the mummy argument. Like before, I will tell you the structure, and then I will try to argue for each premise. If these are genuine, coherent remains, then they are aliens. These are genuine, coherent remains, therefore they are aliens again. This is a logically valid argument, so if the premises are true, then the conclusion follows. Genuine, coherent remains, this just means this once was a living thing. It dried up, and that's what we have. It wasn't built or anything like that. This was once upon a time a living thing that is now dried up. Here we go. So let's start with the first one. If they're genuine, they're alien. I'm not assuming for the time being that they are genuine. I'm just saying in a nutshell, these things are so weird that if they're real, they're not from around here. They're something else. There is, as I said, some DNA evidence. They pulled it off of Victoria. Since Victoria's already missing her head, they just took some of the tissue from here. They've also taken some skin samples from Victoria, and they've analyzed that data. Now, remember what I said earlier. I'm trying to make an argument based entirely on evidence that ordinary people like you and me can understand and be convinced by. DNA evidence isn't like that. Normal people like you and me don't know how to parse ancient DNA. It's messy, it's complicated, requires professionals. So it's interesting stuff. All I need you to know about the DNA evidence is A, they have DNA, and B, it's weird. It's not like when we just run it through the DNA scanners, it says llama. All right. And then there's the anatomical evidence. This is what I want to focus on with you. So this is a report from Rios Lopez. This is his slides nicely translated into English for us from the Peru hearing. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to call some attention to it. You have access to the whole thing. I encourage you to look at all the details. So here's some highlights. Oh, sorry. We're talking about one of them. The most studied of them is named Josefina. We have good reason to believe she's female for reasons which will become obvious. So they are humanoid. They have basically human form with reptilian characteristics. They have no hair, no ear holes, no septum, the bones in your nose. They don't have nipples, and they have keratinized skin, which is essentially kind of reptilian skin. They have a strangely shaped mouth. They don't have teeth. They just have two bones, kind of bony plates at the front. This means that it doesn't seem like they're capable of chewing anything. They would have to survive off of aspiration of liquids. So sucking up some kind of a liquid would be how these things would have to be nourished. Josefina has eggs, 3 of them with a 4th one gestating. And we can actually see, according to Lopez, or Rios Lopez, not only the eggs, but a full reproductive system. So we have a cloaca, which those of you who aren't familiar with their biology, is essentially a general purpose vent that reptiles and birds have, which is used for waste and for reproduction. There is a uterus, and we actually see this kind of 4th egg in formation. So the idea is there is actually an oviduct, a series of eggs in various stages of development inside of Josefina. She has a tridactyl hand. She has a 3-fingered hand, and it's a very strange 3-fingered hand. The structure of it is very unlike ours. The closest thing that it is like is a velociraptor. She also has strange feet. They are closest to this large bird called a cassowar, which is sort of like an ostrich or an emu or something like that. She also has bones that are hollow, much like certain kinds of birds and, of course, dinosaurs. She only has one bone in her forearm, his forearm. For some reason, the pronouns got mixed up here, but we don't try not to stress out too much about pronouns right now, right? So he has only one bone in his forearm and the same in the leg. So you and I, of course, have 2 up here and 2 down here, right? on each limb. So we have 4. Anyways, not so here. Just 1 on each side. This is weird. This is different from us. And he makes quite a big deal out of this because everything that is a terrestrial bony being, organism on this planet has those double bones in their forearms and their legs. So this would mean that if there's a common ancestor between us and this thing, it's real far back, like before the bony fish. So real far back. I'll show you, this is also true of the legs. So this is a pelvic exam of a human. We have these really nice ball and socket joints on our hips, and they don't. Those also go all the way back to the bony fishes, right? So all amphibians and whales and reptiles and birds and all that kind of stuff, we all have these ball and joint socket hips like this, but they don't. Their leg bones flatten out before they get to the hip, which is, again, very strange, and things will be made of this. We'll talk about them later, but for now, this is further evidence that if these things are real, they're not from around here. There has also been some study, as I said, done on the skin. What kind of skin do these things have? They basically have continuous skin, so there is no evidence of cuts or tears or modifications. It is a smooth covering of skin all over their bodies. And as we said, skin samples have been taken. They've been stained and studied and things like that. And the claim is that they're essentially like reptile skin, highly keratinized, acellular, etc. There are no mucus glands or sweat glands, so they seem to be from someplace that has a very dry climate. This confirms a reptilian biology in these creatures. Here's something very weird about them. I have no idea what to make about this, but it is true. They have different numbers of ribs. This is unlike anything on our planet. Everything, including snakes, I looked this up because a friend of mine was asking, like, is it true that snakes, as they grow longer, get more ribs? No, they have the same number of ribs. So every individual of the species, unless it's a weird mutant, has the same number of ribs, but not so here. Josefina has 11, Alberto has 8, the family each has 10, and Victoria has 11. This is very odd. Something else odd is they have metal implants under their skin and in front of their bones. Not all of them, just 3 of them. Just Josefina has one in her chest, Alberto has one on his hip, and Clara also has one on her chest. In her chest, technically. So here's the argument. If these are genuine coherent remains, they're aliens. These are genuine coherent remains, therefore they're aliens. So I claim to have given you some argument for the first thing. These are so weird that if they're real, they're not from around here. Why should we think that they are genuine coherent remains rather than something that somebody built as a joke or whatever to sell to the highest bidder? The argument basically goes like this. There are no signs of assembly. There's no seams or reinforcements, screws, or anything like that. There are no signs of alteration. There's no signs that the bones have been ground, or cut, or anything like that. There's a close fit and connective tissues at every joint. So it's not like you're just sticking 2 bones next to each other. They fit together, and there's connective tissues in between them, right? There's like ligaments and tendons and, I don't know, whatever the juicy stuff, the cartilaginous stuff between the bones. All that stuff is there. And that's evidence that they are, in fact, genuine coherent remains. There are signs of natural wear and tear. Apparently, if you kind of look at where the bones would rub against each other, there is some kind of wear pattern. And there is a complete and coherent set of soft tissues and organs. So it's not just the bones. You've got the whole thing. It's like if you took a whole dead body and dried it out. You've got everything in there. This is the claim. Let me try to show you how this claim has been substantiated. So there have been a number of different types of scans done. Ordinary x-rays. Here we go. This is an ordinary x-ray. Almost all of the existing debunks of Josefina have been done by people looking at this x-ray and saying, that thing's too weird to be real in various ways. Is that me? That's you. Oh my gosh, my son. Ruining my talk. Johnny, you know what your penance can be? You could give me water. Could you do that for me? If you go down that hallway, there's a drinking fountain and there's a water filler. You would be a hero. Johnny and the rest of my lovely family has had to put up with a lot the past several months. Notice that he's the only one here, and that's because he doesn't have a choice. All right, anyway, so x-rays have been done. As I said, most of the existing debunks are based on this picture alone, or this one and the profile version. There's also been CT scans, and so that they've actually been, some of them have been reconstructed into full 3D models. If you go to that Alien Project website I mentioned, you can see a video which will rotate and slice through in all various angles these CT scans, so you can see what's going on inside of here. I just want to call your attention to a couple of things, right? Because the claim is, sneak preview, lots of people say that somebody made these by taking apart the corpses of other things and squishing them together. But as you can see, there are all of the soft tissues required to properly connect these things up. And again, you can see all of the connective tissues between everything. Here's the hand complete with all of your kind of, structural things that you would need in a hand. Here's those odd hips. And if we zoom forward a little bit, then you can see those eggs. A few weeks ago, in September 20th, they did a live stream from a hospital in Mexico. I think I might get some of this wrong, but one of these people, I think it's this guy, is a radiologist. One of these people, I think it's this guy, is a joint surgeon. This is Zalce Benitez. This is a radiology tech. And this, hilariously and beautifully, is a notary public who is there to just say, I swear, this is real. I just love it that they got a notary to be in the... it's just, I don't know, I love these guys. All right. Oh, and this guy's a journalist. Yeah. So they ran another CT scan. This is a better CT scanner. And then they sat around and interpreted it. There's no 3D model of this, so, it's hard for those of us who are not experts to figure out what's going on. But the idea was they went through to try to confirm, hey, joint surgeon, does this look like a real joint to you? Or does it look like something that somebody glued together, et cetera? And, they all said, this is really weird. This looks real. And, she also has eggs. This is Clara. There's digital radiography, which is essentially an X-ray, but like a cooler one. This is the DR100E, if you want to look up the specs on that. I did, because that's what's happening in my life these days. You get these really nice high-resolution scans, which you can, alter the brightness and stuff on, and you can pan around. You can go watch this video. It's quite nice. She has a plate in her chest also, unlike the dumbbell-shaped one that's in Victoria's chest. This is kind of a shield-shaped one. And, she has eggs, and there you go. There's also this thing called fluoroscopy, which also uses X-rays differently. But the cool thing about this is it's real time, so you can just move things around and rotate them. You should look at this video. It's pretty hot. Benitez sticks his hand in there to prove that it's really working, right? So that's pretty fun. And again, you can see slightly different images of the same thing that I've already told you about. Oh, you can see Clara's little curvy hands, which are very weird. They're very weird. All right, so that's the data. And so we need to explain the data. Obviously, I've just given you snippets of the data. Please feel free to go look on your own. So what I want to do is, as best I can, imagine every possible way we could explain what we've just seen, and then go through and eliminate everything but their genuineness. That's what I want to try to do. What's going on here? These exobiologists claiming that these things are aliens based on these scans, why are they doing that? Well, they might be saying something that's unintentionally false. It might be an honest mistake. They might be saying something that's intentionally false. They might be lying to us. Somebody might be lying to us. Or they might be telling us something that is strange but true. Obviously, I have space in here, so we're going to flesh out sub-options for all these things. All the action is going to be in the hoax hypothesis, because the unintentionally false hypothesis, not very interesting. Let me give you an example of an unintentionally false claim about aliens. So this thing is called the Atacama mummy. Some of you have probably seen this thing before. It is a very odd-looking being. You understand why, if you saw this, you might say, that's an alien, right? Once it was submitted for further analysis, it turns out not to be an alien. It's just a very strangely deformed human. But this is not mistaken identity. This is not a strangely deformed human. This is way too weird to be strangely deformed. So if it's not real, it's a lie, right? It's intentionally false. So we can get rid of unintentionally false. If it's false, it's on purpose. Let's consider we now live in the world of visual effects, right? These days you can produce a high-quality Godzilla TV show is going to come out in a few weeks, apparently, because now we can just make movie-quality visual effects, CGI, 3D model kind of stuff on a relatively low budget. Can we do this with visual effects? Well, it depends on what the this is. If you're talking about a single image, then of course we can. We could do this a long time ago, right? This is a very famous picture of the Cottingley fairies. This fooled a lot of people into believing that there were real fairies for a while. It turns out these are just paper cutouts stuck into the ground and some pseudo-clever photography. None of us would be fooled by this, but this was long before Photoshop, and so everybody was like, whoa, fairies, right? Could you create an X-ray image that looks like this? Of course you could. That being said, I do just want to note, it would be a fair amount of work. This is a fairly detailed 3D model, if it's a 3D model. It would take a professional or a highly skilled amateur a decent amount of time to do this, right? So even just generating this image false, it's not nothing. It's not effortless. It's a challenge. You'd need some skill. But fair enough, of course, a highly skilled or even a moderately skilled 3D modeler could do something like this. But we're not talking about a single image. We're talking about, among other things, video of scans and things like this. So, we don't need to pay attention to single images. We have to pay attention to videos. Could we generate a video that looks like that? I mean, yeah. Everything in this frame is a lie. Everything. The water, the sky, the rock, all of it is 3D modeled. It's a miracle, the stuff that we can do now. It's extremely impressive, right? So could we create that kind of rotating hand image? Of course we could. However, the interesting thing is not the images themselves, it's the alleged backstory. In addition to showing you the scans, they show you taking the scans with people who are credentialed medical professionals. So you can't just say you could make the scans, you also have to make a documentary about it. And you can do that in one of two ways. You could do it as a mockumentary, like This Is Spinal Tap, right? Where you pretend that you have this band that turns up their amp to 11 and you hear all their tragic and hilarious backstories, and right? But everybody involved in this is an actor. They all know that they're lying. So this isn't going to be very helpful in this case because it's not plausible to think that Zelce Benitez and Rios Lopez and all these other people are just in on a big scam. That would be a strange thing to do unless we imagine some kind of motivation that's difficult to imagine. So it's not a mockumentary. If it's anything, if it's fake, it's got to be a prank played on these people, these professionals. So somebody is setting this up to fake them, right? Now they do have real objects, physical objects, but I suppose you could imagine someone having a fake object and then sticking it in a scanner and then making the scanner come up with a 3D render or something. This is a hard thing to do too, but could it in principle be done? I mean, sure, but you're going to have to do it here too and here too. So it's hard to do. I want to claim it's not plausible that this is a prank. I think we can rule out visual effects. Now, quick internet call out. Hey, Corridor crew. You guys are good at analyzing all this 3D modeling stuff and you play pranks all the time. I would love it if you guys did an episode where you tried to go through what it would take to generate this whole mess, this whole documentary thing using visual effects. You could do it with various versions where the people are in on it, and you could do it where you try to fool as many people as possible. It'd be great. But I'm going to ignore this, barring the Corridor Crew episode that proves otherwise. I think we can rule out visual effects. We're going to have to do practical effects. We're going to have to build a thing or find a thing or make a thing that can pass through multiple medical scanners undetected. That's what we got to figure out how to do. Well, we could just completely fabricate one. We all fell in love with Baby Yoda, now Grogu. Why? Because he's real. The actors in the room with Grogu actually get to interact with something that's not a tennis ball on a stick, right? So you can actually see it. You can see it move. It's very beautiful. Could we make something that looks like these mummies? Well, on the outside, sure. Here's a ride at, I don't know, one of these Disney places. This is one of the Avatar beings, and the Na'vi, and it's singing a song and everything, and it looks relatively realistic, not quite like Grogu, right? But on the inside, it looks like this. So if you ran this through an X-ray or a CT scanner, it's going to look like a monster. It's not going to look like a living organism. So we can safely rule out this. This is what it looks like on the inside. No gears, no servos, nothing like that. No metal plates except for the weird ones in their chest, right? So nope, it's not that. So maybe it's a minor alteration of living things, because the thing is, when you pass these things through these scanners, they're picking up the right density for bone and cartilage and meat, right? That's why it shows up in those scanners like they do. The densities all have to be right. So the easiest way to make something with all the densities right is to start with a living organism of some kind. You could try to make minor alterations to it. Now this thing is the Metapet creature. This is a hoax, a known hoax. And unfortunately, this guy, Jaime Maussan, fell for it. Now, one of the reasons why everybody is saying we can ignore all this is because this guy is a hoaxer. He did, in fact, think that this thing was an alien, and he made a pretty big deal about it. More on that later. It was a buffy, tufted marmoset without any fur. This is not a buffy, tufted anything without any fur. It's too weird to make out of something by minorly altering it, by removing its fur. So we can safely get rid of minor alterations. We could perhaps do major alterations. I'm going to show you one of the other objects. Remember I said there were 10 mummies that we have good data on. One of them is named Wawita. She's a little girl. And she looks weird. She also has a 3-fingered hand and 3-toed feet. Sorry, 3-fingered hands, both of them. But upon analysis, we can see that she's an ordinary human whose toes and fingers have been cut off. It looks like during her lifetime, right? So you can see the places where the toes would attach. She's been mutilated at some point, either when she was alive or after she died. This is not like that. There's not a place here to cut off the other fingers. This is very odd. We'll come back to this later. So what you could try to do is what's called Frankensteining. Now, what I call nobody else calls it this. That makes it sound like what some politicians say, people say that it's Frankensteining. No. I just, you know what Frankensteining is. Taking multiple organisms and stitching them together. This is, those people who believe that it is a hoax, this is what they, generally speaking, think that it is. Now, there are real historical examples of things like these. They're called Fiji mermaids. P.T. Barnum had one. A bunch of people in that time period had them. You make a Fiji mermaid by taking something like a monkey and a fish and cutting them in half and hooking them together again, and then saying, I found a mummy of a mermaid, right? Now, if you run these things through scanners, they look real weird, right? Because in order to get them to hold together and not fall apart, you got to fill them full of ribbing and things like this. Different ones look slightly different, but all of them have various traces that you can detect. Certainly, if you ran them through the kind of scanners that we're looking at today, I've shown you images from, you could detect that these things are in fact fake. Now, the hypothesis floating around is the weirdest thing you have to make is the skull. And so there's a claim made that these are llama skulls, parts of llama skulls. And this is the evidence. You're looking at it, right? This skull looks kind of like that. If you take the back part of a llama skull and cut off all the rest of it, you could make a skull sort of like this, right? Now, there are problems with the llama skull hypothesis. This is Rios Lopez again pointing out that actually the skulls aren't correctly, they're too big on the inside to be the part of a llama skull. There's also various features about the bones and the type of bones that there are that he says is not compatible with the llama skull hypothesis. But let's just run with it. Now, I'm going to make this really easy. I'm going to make this the easiest possible llama skull related case. We're just going to make up a figure, Llama Man, and then we're going to make a mummy for Llama Man. So here's all you have to do. Go find a human mummy, of which there are apparently many in Peru, so that's not so hard. You got to go get a human mummy, and then you got to get a llama mummy or a living one and dehydrate it or something. And you got to cut off the head, and then you stick it on the other one. This is the easiest possible thing you could do in this space, right? Now, how hard is that? Hard. I don't know what kind of glue you're going to use to glue a dried out llama skull to a human mummy without having it fall off, without any reinforcements in it. And you're going to have really obvious seams where you put them together. Because skin is like leather, and leather seams are obvious, right? But this is too easy. We have to make a whole humanoid reptile. So here we go. Thanks to one of my students yesterday, we're going to make one. Because they gave me this beautiful plastic alien skeleton, and I'm going to build a mummy out of it real quick and just describe to you what it would take. So obviously the weirdest thing you need to do is have a skull. And we already talked about how to do this. So you're going to get a llama skull, and you're going to shape it so it looks like an alien skull. And then you're going to get a bunch of other bones. Now remember how weird those bones are, so you can't actually just use a human mummy, because human mummies have sternums in the middle, and these things don't. They have these strangely circular ribs without a sternum in the middle. It just goes here all the way around. So you're not going to be able to use a human mummy. You could maybe work with the human mummy, but you're going to have to take it apart and then glue it all back together. Now this thing is handy. It's got the little clip on it, so I can just shove it in there and it'll stay. But if these were actual bones, presumably you'd have to use something like an epoxy, and then you'd have to like tape it or something, clamp it while the epoxy dried, and then you'd have to take all that off because you can't leave anything in there because it's going to show up on the CT scans. Am I putting your arm on right, buddy? You have too many fingers anyways, so you're going to have to build the hands. You'd have to take the skeleton. You couldn't just take a hand and leave all the flesh on it, right? You'd have to strip it down to the bones, and then you'd have to put all that together again, etc. So I just told you basically what it would take to build the skeleton. Now, is this easy? No. You have to find all these bones, including these weird round ribs, or you'd have to bend them somehow, and then you have to glue them together again. This thing's nice and wobbly, but the mummies aren't. They're very rigid. So you're going to have to glue this thing together and let it dry until you have a nice rigid mummy. Got it? Just the bones. But we don't have just the bones. We have all the soft tissues too. So we got to add some soft tissues. I'm going to make the guts green. All right? So we got to have some guts in here. I won't take too long in this, but I'm really excited about this part. So you have to put up with it. Ugh! Johnny, get that out of there for me. All right, so we're going to get some guts, and we're going to put them in here. You got to fill all this up because there's no gaps in the CT scans, right? It's continuous all the way through. Every place there should be some kind of organ or flesh, there is some kind of organ or flesh. All right, hold on just a second. You're getting that out of there? Stick your fingers in there and make a mess, kid. It's not going to come out that way. I tried already. That's why I'm hiring you for this job. All right. Now, we got to have oviducts and cloaca and stuff in here, so it's going to be a lot harder than this, right? Thank you, sir. We need some eggs. Just a second. Johnny's excited about this part. There, you can have the rest of those. All right, we got to put 3 eggs in here, right? No problem. We got to have some metal plates in here, so we'll stick a quarter in here somewhere. All right, good enough. All right, and then, well, where did our arm go? Sorry. Then we're going to have to cover the whole thing in flesh because remember, it has DNA. So you can't just use Play-Doh. You have to use flesh. And I don't know what flesh you're going to use because remember, the DNA is going to come out weird. So if you just use llama meat, it's going to come out llama meat when you do the x-rays, or well, not the x-rays, the DNA analysis, right? Here's another problem. If you use dried meat, it's not going to stick to the bones. If you use wet meat, it's not going to stick to the bones. So you're going to have to get it to stick to the bones. And then you're going to have to dry it out. And when you do that, it's going to dry at a different rate than it was when it was there. So it's going to separate from the bones. And this is going to be hard to do. And then, after you've got this thing, you need to wrap it seamlessly in reptile skin. No problem. Just go get a nice large reptile and then just shove this thing inside. And then, what exactly? Wrap it around every single limb and every single joint without any seams. I have no idea how anyone could do this. This was once a T-Rex. And if you look at it, everywhere there's a joint, there's a seam. Obvious seams, right? If you make a glove out of leather, it's just full of seams. You're not going to get something that looks like this under an x-ray unless you use skin. But there are no seams. Not on these things. They are not Fiji mermaids. This is a shitty Fiji mermaid. But that's not what they are. Johnny, did you get all your candy?
I think so.
Awesome. They're not Fiji mermaids. Llama skulls are the wrong size and bone shape. Bone shape? Bone shape. The ribs and pelvises are also weird, so I don't know where you're going to get those from. Those strange circular ribs, you can't find, you're going to have to make those out of something else. The hips or the pelvis is very strange, so you're not just going to have, like, you can't just use the human pelvis. The bones are all the wrong size. You're going to have to use children mummies. I don't know how many children mummies there are. Not as many as there are adult mummies, probably. But I don't know. You're going to need a bunch of them, right? So there's no practical way, if you're doing something like this, to join all the bones in ways that would hold them rigid and still look like connective tissue in all the scans. There's no practical way to line them with flesh that would contain weird DNA and then dry them out without pulling off the bone. There's no way to cover them with a seamless covering of skin that looks like reptile skin under a microscope and then dry it out without ripping, because you'd have to sew it normally if you were going to shrink the leather to the thing so that it doesn't just pull apart, and you can't do any of that. I don't think Frankensteining is possible in this case. I don't think you could make something like this out of living body parts. We can't build it out of other stuff. I think we can rule out practical effects. Now, hey, Adam Savage. You know, Adam Savage the Mythbuster. Would you kindly show us in practical effects the closest thing you could do that could make something that might be able to pass undetected through a CT scanner and a fluoroscope and a whatever those other things are? I claim it's impossible. I don't think anybody could do such a thing. But if anybody could, it's Adam, so prove me wrong if you can, buddy. Under the assumption that Adam Savage doesn't disprove me, we can rule out practical effects. So they're not fake. You couldn't do it with a computer. You couldn't do it in real life. So they're just real. I know this is strange, but true. Now, you know, let's just reconsider the possibility that they're weird but not aliens. You know, like a platypus, right? I don't know, there's a thing, and it's got like a duck bill and a beaver tail, and it's venomous, and it glows under a black light, and it has eggs, and it excretes milk. That's a real thing in the real world. Super, super weird, but these things are weirder than that. Remember the bone structure thing, right? Even the platypus, all of the bony creatures have shared bone structures that these things don't have. So they're not weird, but not aliens. They're just aliens. They're aliens. Here's the argument, just to recap. If they're genuine, coherent remains, they're aliens. Yeah, they're so incredibly weird that if they're real, they're not around here, they're from somewhere else. They are genuine, coherent remains. You couldn't make them. We went through all the possibilities. So they're just aliens. Now, there are a bunch of existing debunks out there. I'm just going to run quickly through the ones that are there. I know I'm already imposing on your time a little here. These are known hoaxers. I actually studied one and got some data. They couldn't move very well. They wouldn't be able to breathe. They shouldn't be humanoid. This is just a summary of some of the kinds of things that are being said. I'm not claiming to give an exhaustive rebunk of all the debunks, but I think all the debunks that exist fall into these basic types, and they all share basically the same problems. I already admitted this is a hoax, but this guy's not a hoaxer. He didn't make the hoax. Somebody hoaxed him. He's a journalist. He fell for it, sure enough. This thing is also weird, but it's not a hoax. That's just an honest mistake. Oh, so much is being said about this journalist, right? And why we can't trust any of this because he's involved. But look, we've already demonstrated that a hoax isn't possible, and the exobiologists, the people who I care about, have no associations with hoaxes. Now, it is true that Zalce Benitez did believe that the Atacama mummy, that strange-looking human child with a deformed skull, he did believe it was an alien. He sent it to Stanford. They analyzed it, and they said, no, it's not. This is science. This is not a hoax. This is just a hypothesis that turned out to be false. This is just an honest mistake. Mosan has not perpetrated a hoax. He was merely taken in by one. We see a bunch of argumentative fallacies all over the analyses of these cases in the news, right? So, for instance, there's an ad hominem fallacy, which basically means I don't have to listen to your argument because I don't like you. I don't like you maybe for good reason. But in philosophy, we don't let you do this. The argument needs to be taken on its own merits. Where it came from doesn't really matter. There's also guilt by association, so our exobiologists are being claimed guilty because of their association with this overly credulous journalist. And then there's what's called begging the question. I won't go through the details of this, but if you look at these articles, they're like, we know these people are hoaxers because these things were proven to be false a long time ago, therefore they're false. That's a circular argument. That's making an argument that depends on the thing that you're trying to prove. I actually studied one and got some data. There is at least one of these by this gentleman, Flavio Antonio Estrada Moreno. I've talked to him the other day. He's a good guy. We strongly disagree about these aliens. But here's what his argument said. I'll show you the video. I'll give you the video, and you can look at it. Who is this guy, by the way? He's from the Institute of Legal Medicine and Forensic Sciences of the Public Ministry of Peru. Now, look, I believe these things are real, and I believe stories will be told about this whole mess for generations. Because, man, this got ugly. Because Moreno and others have claimed that this is what happened, but that they started with human mummies, which means desecrating significant cultural artifacts, which would be illegal. So our exobiologists and archaeologists and friends have been sued and accused of criminal activity. He was one of the people who presented the evidence against them, right? The objects analyzed are plausibly interpreted to be hoaxes. Now, this is going to get a little complicated. I already told you it's going to get a little complicated. Estrada Moreno is looking at a thing, some things, at least 2 or 3 things, that are hoaxes, it seems. Let me show you. Now, remember I said that the Huaqueros claim that there are 50 plus of these things. There's a lot of them. Some of them are whole mummies. Some of them are just parts, skulls. You can tell just by looking at this that not all of these are of equally high quality, right? Some of these are shadier than others. This is the one, or one of the 2, that he analyzed. And you can tell this is fairly different from the others that I have shown you, right? There's some pictures of these close up. There's not actually fingers. There's just like a bone with like leather that like has been sliced in various ways. And if you run these things through x-rays, they look like this. Unfortunately, this is probably a monkey that was mutilated to pretend that it was one of these other mummies. Now look, if your job is to find artifacts and sell them, that's how you make your living, and then you find these amazing artifacts, it's very likely that it will go through your head. You know what? We could sell the really high quality ones to the discriminating buyer, and then we could make a bunch of not so good ones and sell them to the dupes, right? This seems to be what did in fact happen, right? So I do think that thing, this thing, is probably a hoax. But it's not the same object. It's not the ones we've been talking about, right? And when this guy talks about Josefina, he doesn't have Josefina in front of him. He's looking at pictures of Josefina. And he notes, even in his own video, she is more carefully manufactured. She must have been more expensive to make than the others, right? But look, I've already tried to tell you, this is not a fake. It couldn't be faked. It's too complicated for that. So here we have a fallacy of what's called false equivalence, right? There are things that are in common between these two. This is a fake, therefore this is a fake. Yeah, but you're ignoring the things that are not in common, that in this case are very important. There are various claims made about their biology, like that they couldn't move very well. It is admittedly very weird that we don't have ball joint hips and we don't have opposable thumbs. So you might think that these things wouldn't be able to do anything cool. I call to your attention just a couple of things from our own ecosystem. This is a praying mantis. And praying mantis, of course, have exoskeletons, so they don't have ball joint hips either. They also don't have opposable thumbs, and they do just fine. They just decimate everything they want to eat, and they're super good at it. They're just, right? We should not be too speculative in our exobiology. If aliens are out there, they've got to be like this, is a very dangerous thing to do, because we don't really have any idea what aliens would be like if they are out there somewhere. You might also puzzle about how the hinges work. We actually have one. Victoria, the most notable feature of her is that she has no head. But the second and more important feature of her is her limbs are already bent. So you want to know how the bending works? Study her. You can just look at whatever happens to whatever's in there when you bend. This is worthy of more study. They wouldn't be able to breathe because they don't have a sternum. When I do this, my rib cage expands. When I do that, it goes back in again. This is one of the sexy things about being human, right? But do you need that in order to breathe? No. I mean, frogs can do that too, but frogs can also breathe through their skin, right? They don't need to inhale. They can just aspirate directly through their skin. How sure are you that if you have circular ribs, you're not going to be able to breathe? Way more sure than you should be, because you don't have any idea what the evolutionary history of these things might be, or whatever these things are. They shouldn't be humanoid. Neil deGrasse Tyson, as I said earlier, is actually taking these things a little more seriously than you might expect. He's happy that they're being presented in public and being studied by scientists, and the data's being released and stuff like that. But even he says, it's so weird that they look like us. And admittedly, it's weird that they look like us. Can we imagine any explanations of this? Yes, at least two. One is convergent evolution. These things look incredibly alike, right? This is a shark and an ichthyosaur, and thank you, and a dolphin. They all have basically the same shape, but they aren't directly descended from each other. In between here and here, the ancestors of this turned into reptiles on land and then went back into the ocean. And then the mammals also hung out on land and then went back into the ocean. And they reconverged on this shape. Why? Because it's awesome hydrodynamically. It's a really good shape for what you're trying to do. Is there anything especially awesome about being a biped? Yeah. So how many legs do chairs have? 4. Thank you, Johnny. Right? How many legs do tables have? 4. How many wheels do cars have? 4. Why? Because symmetry is cool. So powers of 2. 2 is not enough. You'll wobble around, right? 4 gives you a nice stable thing. So it's very likely, in any evolutionary circumstance, that you'd end up with quadrupeds. When we build robots to run around on legs, we give them 4 legs. 4 legs is cool. Now let's say you get really good and brainy for whatever reason. You're going to start using some of those legs, probably the ones by your eyeballs and your mouth, and then you're going to start using them for detailed tasks. And eventually, at some point, you're going to want them to get out of the way, so you're going to stand up so you can do things with them. It's not crazy to think that the humanoid form could be like this, that it serves some evolutionary purpose, and that we see some kind of convergent evolution. It's also possible that it's genetic engineering. This is the movie Prometheus from the Alien franchise. Apparently there's a new Alien movie coming out, and Ridley Scott said it was good. Now that doesn't mean it is good, but it might be good. It's worth at least paying attention to the reviews when it comes out. Anyways, the hypothesis here is there was a species prior to ours that seeded many planets with the genes so that they would evolve into humanoid things. Is that what's going on here? Maybe. Or maybe somebody just built these things for whatever reason. They do, remember, have different numbers of ribs, which is really weird. Like, I don't know, maybe you try out different numbers of ribs when you're genetically engineering these things for various purposes. Those ones, it's better if they have more ribs. Those ones, it's better if they have fewer ribs. That's a thing you could do if you were genetically engineering them. These are all interesting observations, but they are not proof of a hoax. They are admittedly incredibly weird. Does that mean that they're not real? No, they're just incredibly weird. Let me quickly address two other questions and then we'll get out of here. Or rather, we'll just talk about questions. I hope you're not overly bored. Isn't it crazy? They seem to be real. Wouldn't they leave other traces? Okay, so these things, I didn't even tell you this. We've radiocarbon dated them at 1,000 years old. If there were aliens in Peru 1,000 years ago, you might expect that we would see other evidence of it. And it would be nice, right? We have these two converging arguments, the 5OC argument and the mummy argument. Let's make some predictions. If they were there, we might be able to see some signs of them. Oh, these are called the Nazca mummies, right? Some of you are already familiar with the Nazca lines. These are petroglyphs on the ground, these patterns that persist over long periods of time. They're many hundreds of years old. They're pre-Columbian. And you can only see them from the sky at a time when nobody could fly. Some of the very normal kinds of things like this, right? This is presumably a spider. And one of them looks like this. Let's go up to Chile a little bit. How many fingers does this thing have? Oh, it has 3. Look at that head. This is another one also in Chile, right? This other tridactyl giant thing. It menacingly has a giant sword. I don't know what to make of that. Also, we have, as I've already noted, a bunch of mummies and skulls and things. There's a group of people before the Nazca called the Paracas people, and they have strangely elongated skulls. Now, this has been explained in any number of ways. It is true, when a human child is born, the skull is not fully formed so that you can squeeze that little brain out of that little birth canal through those hips, right? They're meant to do that on purpose. If you took a child with a newly formed skull and then you just wrapped it up real tight and kept it that way until the skull healed over, then it would end up with an elongated skull. Are these things aliens? Probably not. They're probably just beings like that. But why would you do that? Because they look like they're gods. Oh, that's a little weird if it turns out that we have mummies of things with these strangely elongated skulls. Remember our sad little Wawita? Why would you cut off the fingers and toes of your child so that she has 3 fingers on her hand and 3 toes on her feet? I mean, maybe if you were being ruled by beings with elongated skulls and tridactyl hands, it would be cool. I told you there were 10 mummies. We haven't talked about Maria yet. Maria's full size, like me and you. She's weird. Would you like some water? She doesn't have ears. She doesn't have hair. And she has tridactyl hands. Not like Wawitas. These things are coherent all the way through. And they have too many phalanges. These things are phalanges on us. 1, 2, 3. And then there's one under here, right? That if you cut this, which I wouldn't recommend, you could have 4 phalanged fingers. But Wawita has 5 phalanged fingers. That was either done surgically or she was genetically engineered as a hybrid between humans and the other things. Now, you can't do that the old-fashioned way. the old mammal cloaca doesn't produce living offspring. You'd have to do that with genetic engineering. This is Wawita, cutting off the fingers and toes. This is Maria. She's something else. Why would these things only show up in Peru and Chile? What's so cool about South America? I mean, South America's awesome. I've not been able to visit yet. It's high on my list of places to go right now. Oh, they aren't. These are the Japanese Dogu statues. There's lots of them. They look just like our little friends, and look, they have 3-fingered hands. Let me just take that one, the one I just pointed at, and let's just take Josefina, and let's just flip her and invert her and put her right next to the other one. Look, man. I have no idea what's going on. I really don't. But something's going on. Something very strange. Look, she's even got the weird chest-shaped thing. When you've eliminated all which is impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Thanks, Sherlock Holmes. Hot take. The conclusion that I'm pushing for feels absurd to you because we are on the front end of a major paradigm shift. So many of our priors are wrong that we don't even know how to assimilate this data. If this is correct, that aliens have been here for thousands of years, then our whole understanding of who we are is wrong. And that's a hard pill to swallow. So what are we going to do about it? What's our call to action? Hey, Hank Green. You know all those science YouTubers? Will you please collect some of them and go to Peru and get us some more data and help convince people that this is at least worth paying attention to? Hey, Congress, surprisingly, good job! You're actually trying to get to the bottom of whatever our government has been hiding from us for so long. The kind of stuff that David Grush has been telling us about. You actually passed the UAP Disclosure Act. I don't know if you guys know about this, but Congress recently passed a bill that says that President Biden has 90 days to form an independent review board to look at whatever is going on and then release information in a gentle, selective way to the public. And anybody that has secret alien stuff needs to give it to the government within 300 days. This is my official application to be on the independent review board. One of the things I would love for my government to get to the bottom of is this, which is a real U.S. Navy patent for how to make an inertial mass reduction device. There is a U.S. Navy patent on the books. Google it, I promise. That tells you how to build an anti-gravity craft. If we have one of these things, I want to ride. So, Joe, look, man, you can do this one of two ways. You can let Congress get out in front of you, or you can lead. You can tell us what's going on. You can calm the public. You can do your job. Donald Trump, you're not going to let sleepy Joe Biden do that, are you? Get out in front of this thing. You want to be remembered for something awesome? How about that? All you other clowns. Except for you, you're not a clown. Not a great politician, but a human being. You know, it's legacy time. Come on. Get something out here. Tell us what's going on. Oh, speaking of presidents, President Walter Ted Carter Jr., the incoming president of this fine university, call sign Slapshot, went to Top Gun in 1985, which is the year before the movie Top Gun came out, which means he might have been in Top Gun when they were filming Top Gun. He's a Navy aviator, so he's either seen these things or he knows somebody he trusts who has. Wouldn't it be great if the flagship university of the fine state of Ohio flew some of our fine people down to Peru and started trying to figure out what the hell is going on? This is my official application to be on that team. What about the rest of us? Hey, please, I'm serious. Don't take my word for it. I'm using all of my woke mind virus powers on you. Go look at the data. I'm going to give you the links. Please go look at that. If I'm wrong, I want to know. I'm serious. I have nothing to win here. My job is just to teach philosophy classes. I'm not making any money. I can pack the classrooms, and nobody pays me any more money. I am the lowest paid member of the Ohio State philosophy faculty. And I teach more people and make more minors than anybody else in my department. Now, that's not my department's fault. But hey, College of Arts and Sciences, if I turn out to be right, give me a raise! Please try to move slowly as you reevaluate your priors. I am serious about this. In case it's not obvious to you, I am not psychologically normal. It's been a rough 5 months. I've been through the ringer, man. Like, wait, what? Everything I know is wrong? Not sleeping, freaking out, digging everywhere to find anything I can, panicking. It's going to be okay. Let's say I'm right, because I am. You're going to have to reevaluate a lot of things. It's going to be okay. Don't jump to conclusions. Take your time. Be open-minded, but be critical about it. Remember that no matter what, we still don't know very much yet. The answer to most questions is we really still don't know. I want you to spend some time with the concept of myth, because here's something that we have believed for a long time. All those primitive people who said they learned agriculture and metallurgy and medicine from beings who came from the sky, those superstitious fools, oh no. Oh no. They might have been right. And we might have burned all of their records and driven them into the wilderness and ignored them. Oh no. We already had lots of good reasons to pay attention to our indigenous people, but maybe we just got like 10 more. The mummies. I want you to have to be critically open-minded about all kinds of things. If these things are real, you're going to have to reevaluate a lot of things. You know that whole ancient alien hypothesis? Maybe we just proved it. You know those alien abduction stories that John Mack from Harvard spent so much time studying and actually trying to pay attention to what people were saying and being surprised by the coherence between them? And oh no, those people might be telling the truth. You know those weird crop circles that keep showing up? That we're not sure how they show up overnight? With all these strange, complicated mathematical patterns, and people say, before they happened, we saw weird things flying in the sky? Oh no. What about those cattle that are showing up in the middle of fields with no blood in them, mutilated in very strange ways? Remember how the mummies can't chew? And then, just loved your loved ones and go on a walk and write some poetry and live the good life, because everything's about to change. It's already going to do that because AI is here in force. And now Maybe aliens? I don't know. I would love it if a mothership came right now. All right, friends, call to action time. We have our friend Sam here, who is the president of the official OSU UFO Club, who not enough of you have been paying attention to because you, like me, thought it was all a bunch of crazy. But it's not. I don't know what it is, but it's not crazy. It's not dumb to be paying attention to these things. Time to kill this stigma and start thinking carefully about stuff. I created a website. It's this one. OSU, that's my number, mummies. It's not just the mummies, it's this whole thing. I promise you, this website is just a WordPress thing hosted on OSU. It has a blog and some article things. All of the links to the videos and resources and stuff I talked about in here are in there. And I promise you, anybody that convinces me I'm wrong about something, I will post a blog post on here. I'm perfectly happy to be wrong. Prove me wrong, and I will say I was wrong. I'm a philosophy professor. We're good at that. We don't even know if we have hands. Like, all this could be an illusion. Like, we don't know what's going on. Social media type things, because you're not going to get notifications on this. Threads is a thing, I guess, because who wants to use X? So that's there. I really only use this to talk about alien things. So if you want to follow something, you could follow that. Thank you for your participation in this, whatever this was. It's at least interesting, right? I'm not totally crazy, right?